this. But yeah, you always want to have it a little bit higher than 1, and if you want to have realistic results, like you want to emulate or simulate water, you would change this to 1.33, and this would also impact your render time, of course, and it would render longer than if you would have it on 1.15 like I do now. And of course also when you change those presets here, so I change it now to GGX, this will also impact your render time and the overall quality of your picture, and you can see we have new fireflies developing in the monkey heads now, or in this monkey head and here on the floor, and this is just because I changed the default to GGX. If I change it back, you can see the distribution of the fireflies is different, and it's not that horrible anymore. If I change this to sharp, you can see we also have a slightly different result. We have some more fireflies there in the background now, I guess, and here is some fireflies in the monkeys. Nothing on the velvet floor right now, but Beckmann, the default, seems actually to work quite decent. Well, actually sharp seems to work quite decent as well. Yeah, so this is just the basic example, and it's already taking way too long, so I'm going back to solid view mode for now, and well, this was actually quite horrible with the lighting. I'm going to delete the light here now, going back to camera view, and I'm going to the world settings, and I'm going to change this to environment texture, and I'm going to load in some random environment texture from this HDR folder here. The one that I used before, I guess it was this one. I'm gonna leave the strength, the emission at 1, and we have a new setting now in Cycles that got added pretty recently, so if you have the latest or one of the latest builds, you should have this sample as lamp, and what that does is it treats the environment texture as a light source, I guess, which is supposed to decrease fireflies and stuff like that. Which it's actually it's supposed to when you don't have, it doesn't render faster, it actually renders a bit slower. So if you would render 100 samples with it, the 100 samples would take longer to calculate than without having this enabled. But the picture at 100 samples is supposed to look a lot cleaner and have less fireflies than the result you would have without having this checked. So yeah, actually I played around with this a little bit, and I figured it actually does exactly what the description said it would do. So in the camera settings, let's enable the limits real quick, and I want to focus on this monkey, which is the original monkey again. So I will enable the DOF and focus on the original monkey and set my aperture size to 0.06. I hope that will be enough. So I loaded in the environment texture now and added the DOF, and I'm going to render view, and 10 samples will take a lot longer now, and you can see the colors, the emission colors from the environment texture and everything else, and our reflective background is not really reflective at all actually, because the roughness at 0.2 is already really high. But I want this to be a mirror, not really a sharp mirror, but I want this to reflect a lot more, so I'm going to lower the roughness to 0.01, and I will have a nice, not sharp, but a nice mirror effect now. And the samples at 10 now, it all looks, of course, it looks a lot more grainy than before. We have a lot more light in our scene, we have a lot more to reflect and stuff. And if we go back to the render settings over here now, I will have to change this to a higher value now to actually have a cleaner result, a lot higher. So the 1000 would probably do for this scene now, but I want to show you the presets here over now. And to refresh this, I enable the check and uncheck the no caustics. So we are at the full global illumination now, which has a lot more bounces, and 128 on all of the light path options. And as you can see, this is a lot more than what direct lighting does. When I change this to direct light, we have a much darker result. Also the caustics are enabled in this now, and usually if I disable the caustics for the full global illumination, it will look something like this. Anyway, we have the diffuse at 0 now, the glossy only at 1, transmission at 2, the bounces only at 8 each, not the max at 128. And I'm not going to go, actually I don't know enough about this, but the bounces, for example, is something like when the light source emits a ray and the ray gets reflected by the object towards the camera, and the bounces are the bounces between the object and the camera, if I'm not mistaken, or between the light source and the object, for example, and stuff like that gets calculated, and this is the way Cycles renders, I guess. I don't know if that explanation makes any sense, but yeah. Anyway, you would have to play around with these values a lot, but the bigger is not necessarily the better. You can read up on the internet if you want to go really in depth, but I usually like to use one of the default presets here and play around with those. So I'm going to change this to limited global illumination on caustics, with caustics, and you can see we have a pretty bright result, and it's a lot more grainy in the beginning, so we would have to render this a lot, or put the render value on something a lot higher than it is in the preview. So 1000 would probably give us a nice clean result as well in the end. If I disable the caustics, it goes a lot faster, it's a little bit darker. The same for full global illumination, no caustics, a little bit darker. And now I enable the caustics again, let it render the 10 samples, and it's brighter and more grainy as well. And it takes a little bit longer to calculate also. So if I will change this back now to direct light and enable the caustics. This gives me a little bit of a darker result, and I like this one the most in this case, and it also seems to go the fastest of all the 3 options I have here, and it takes into account 0 diffuse. Actually, I don't have one single diffuse texture in all of this shader. It's just velvet, glossy, and glass. So I don't really need the diffuse in this, I guess. And for glossy and transmission, it's very low values, and should go faster with the calculations. And I still have caustics, and I have shadows enabled. So I'm going to render this one now on 1000, and this should give us a result similar to what we saw at the beginning. So let me do this real quick. Alright, so this is the final result. It rendered now for 6 minutes and 58 seconds and 1000 path tracing samples, and that was way too much already, because I had a close eye on this while it rendered, and once it passed the 400 mark there was not much improvement in the picture whatsoever. So I probably could have gotten away with like 2 minutes something render time and 400 samples instead of the 1000. Yeah, so that was way overdoing it, and I rendered this in full HD now, and it looks pretty clean to me. Not that grainy at all. So the mirror is as rough as we wanted it to be, I guess, and the ground looks pretty nice and velvet to me as well, and the glass monkeys look pretty cool and are reflecting the environment texture quite nicely, and themselves of course. So everything worked out in the end, I guess, and this was a pretty fast render for me. Well, it was a GPU render. Would I have done this with the CPU, it would have taken ages, I guess, on 1000. Yeah, the 400 are probably more than enough if you want to render the same scene in HD. Change the render here to 400 if you do it on CPU rendering, or whatever works best for you. So to wrap this up, integrator settings, most important when you work with cycles. Lighting, or lighting in general, is very, very important, as you could see when you work with cycles. The material settings, the roughness value, and the sigma for velvet, the IOR for glass, they all have a huge impact on your final results and on your render time. And yeah, it's so the materials are very, very important if you work with cycles. The light is very, very important if you work with cycles. And yeah, the integrator settings, most important when you work with cycles. So those are the points you want to focus on if you want to have a nice and clean result. And if you go into the nodes, into the cycles nodes, let me quickly disable this, and if we go into the cycles nodes, we go into the nodes, we work with different shaders like glossy and diffuse, or glossy and velvet. So we would make a glossy velvet material, and we would need to add a mix shader or an edge shader for that to mix those materials together, and then we have the output to the material surface, and this is mixed at 0.5 now, so we should have equal amounts of velvet and glossy, and this would give us a velvet mirror background plane, I guess. And also have a huge impact on the overall render time, on the overall result, and yeah, stuff like that you need to consider when you work with cycles. So I hope this helped a little bit. If you are working with cycles and you were having trouble with grainy results, grainy pictures, I hope I could help you out a little bit in this tutorial, and I hope you can get to something as clean as this in the end after watching this. Yeah, that's it from me for now. I see you around next time. So bye bye.